We could have homes on separate coasts, go dive in Greece with squids. Could have been so bleeping rich, but instead we had kids. They won't smile for a photo, they won't eat the food we choose. That's why we're heading to the Parents' Lounge to drown ourselves in booze. Every day we're more exhausted, we haven't slept in years. They hit me in the nuts so bad, my eyes filled up with tears. And yes, we'd like to fake our death and go off of the grids, but the truth is we are softies and we truly love our kids. So join us every Tuesday night to laugh at all our pain. Evening in the Parents' Lounge is the cure to staying sane. Welcome to another very special edition, Thursday morning. Honestly, very casual edition because my kids are at school. So this should be our time for the Parents' Lounge. I'm Jamie Kaler, Jason Gowan, and we have a very...
I feel weird because I have to go get them later, so I can't get blistered drunk like I usually do on the night show.
I'm not drinking, and it's the middle of the day, and my kids are at school, and honestly, it was way easier to do it now. So here's the deal. We were going to pre-record this because we have a fantastic guest who couldn't do our live show Tuesday nights, but he's such a baller that he's like, yeah, let's just pop it up live. And I was like, yeah, man, let's do this. Thank you guys for tuning in. We are normally live Tuesday nights, 7 p.m. So check us out then. Or iTunes, we're always up. So please follow, like, subscribe, do what you do. We have a great show for you tonight. This guy is one of my favorite comic actors. He is from the troupe Broken Lizard. I just went and saw the premiere of their new movie that just came out on Hulu, Quasi. Which is fantastic.
Just watched it.
He's ridiculously funny in it.
Yeah, that's really
you know him from Broken Lizard. You know him from Super Troopers, Club Dread, Beerfest, and I got to work with him on Tacoma FD. He plays Wolf Boykins. Please welcome Paul Soter today.
Hey.
Well, Paul needs to be in the middle. Yeah, there it is. Hey, Paul, how are you?
Good. I feel now like I forced you guys into doing a sober show when you would normally be tearing it up on a Tuesday night.
Well, I don't blame you. I blame Pennsylvania's drinking laws for all of this. I just can't go get them drunk today.
I mean, listen, it's just
Guys,
going through Carline hammered is a little bit of an issue here.
My daughter has volleyball on Tuesday nights, guys. You know how that is.
I know. We talk about that a lot because my daughter's playing club soccer until recently when she's like, Dad, I think I'm done with soccer. And I was like, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. So now it's going to be maybe Harry Potter book club. We're not really sure. Now you have two teenagers. You have a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old.
Yeah. And both athletes. And that's like today's challenge is she has volleyball in Temecula on Saturday, which is like a 2-hour drive. And you have to show up for these things at like 6:30 in the morning. So it's that, do we go get a hotel in Temecula? Okay, that's the last time I'm going to swear.
No, you can. It's okay.
You can swear. That's fine.
Yeah,
we've already taken drinking off the table. If we'd lose everything if we took swearing too.
Jeez, please.
We're
so happy to have you because I know you guys have been busy. I talk to Lemmy and Heffernan all the time. And you guys are off because your huge movie just premiered on Hulu. It's like all over the title page, Quasi. I loved it. It was super fun. You're hilarious. You play the Pope and Lucian. So obviously, here's the great thing about live. If you guys have any questions for Paul or, comments, please share. But it was super fun, man. I'm always so jealous every time I see you guys because to have a group of people that you met in college and on the same wavelength and kind of, there's a support group where I feel like most of the time we're all on our own out here.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the worst, it is even in success, you're going to have years and years of misery and rejection. So that's the only reason we stuck it out was, all right, well, look, it's the five of us. We're having a good time. We're getting drunk a lot. And so the rejection and the misery was kind of funny when you could have a laugh about it and you're still having a good time. And that was, I wouldn't have, if I had just been trying to work as an actor, I couldn't have done that.
Yeah, no, it's horrible. It's terrible. It's a terrible way to go through life.
That's the thing. I'm so lucky. Like neither of my kids seems to have any performance interest whatsoever. I'm like, fantastic, great.
People sometimes reach out about my kids or something doing something. And I go, dude, they're offer only. Yeah, they're off. Just showing. I'll bring them to set, but I'm not driving out to Woodland Hills for a go-see to take a couple Polaroids to see if they're up for your catalog, brother.
No. But do they have any of them have the acting bug? Any?
One's in drama. She's not really, she's doing it for more fun. And I think it's because her friends, like they're at the age 8 and 9 where they kind of still do what their friends do, even though it might not be their main interest. They're like, oh, well, so-and-so is doing this. Like one of my daughters was in drama and then she quit because her friend quit. She's like, well, Mia's not in it, so I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, sure.
I got a question in the chat. How do these projects come together for y'all? I loved Quasi and know that it's a group contribution, but how does Let's Make Quasi But So Fucking Weird or a World Cup of Beer Drinking Beerfest come about and evolve?
Good question. Thanks, Cam.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, each one comes together in a totally different way. You mentioned Beerfest. We had done Super Troopers, then we did Club Dread. And I think Club Dread, for a few reasons, didn't really do anything for us. It's kind of developed a following now, but was very off-brand for us to do like a horror comedy right after Super Troopers. And I think that was a little weird for people. And then we went up against Passion of the Christ, which people were going to see by the busloads. I don't know if you guys remember when that movie came out, but they were by Saturday, they were pulling Club Dread off of screens to put Passion of the Christ on more screens. Like they could not accommodate all the people who wanted to see that movie.
Well, it's odd because they're both horror comedy, and so
right. They're both gory, hilarious,
competed against each other. Very
irreverent movies. But so the way Beerfest came together then was, okay, maybe we went a little off brand. What's kind of back in the wheelhouse? So I remember exactly. We were in my apartment in New York City, and it was what's an 87 mile an hour fastball right down the middle for what we think our audience was from Super Troopers. And, we'd done a promotion where they sent us to Australia and it was all about like chugging contests. And we were like, oh, you know what? I bet that's probably a good meat and potatoes concept. And so that's how we came up with Beerfest. And then Quasi was actually a thing that we'd written back when we wrote the original Super Troopers, because we were just setting about trying to make movies and we didn't know what was our style, what we want to do. And we were a sketch comedy group in New York and we were trying to be like Monty Python, and our stage stuff was all wigs and costumes and accents. So we started writing a bunch of different feature scripts. And so really kind of Quasi was going parallel path with Super Troopers. And then that Super Troopers was the one that we could get made. And so Quasi went on a shelf. And then anytime we brought it back up again, there was that like, yeah, that's a little different than what you guys are known for. I don't know if people are going to respond to that. And then it was finally after Super Troopers 2 came out that the studio said, all right, we want to get something going immediately. Can you do Super Troopers 3? And we're like, well, we just started thinking about that. That'll be years away before we've even got a script that we like. They said, do you have anything ready to shoot? And we got this movie Quasi. you guys Searchlight, you do period pieces, you do costume epics. Do you want to do a Broken Lizard costume epic? And we sent them the script still expecting that they would like politely pass, and they were like, no, we love it. Let's do it. So yeah, there was, it wasn't like a sort of a, hey, let's set out to do something different. It was just, oh, you actually have something, you want us to make something now. Let's see what we've got. And that was the kind of favorite script of ours that hadn't gotten made. And we have others. I mean, that's the hope, is that, if this does well on Hulu, that, we've got some other of those kind of Python-esque.
I feel like this one is your closest to Python.
It does feel, there's a very Monty Python feel to it.
For Python-y in tone, because you guys are all playing numerous characters, more so than other movies and stuff. And it's basically just the cast, you guys, and a couple of other just day players, whatever. Some of the guys from Tacoma showed up.
Sure.
Yeah, great.
I mean, that's,
different parts. How was that this time?
It's this thing that we've wanted to do forever, but it feels like that is a trademark Monty Python characteristic, and so it was exciting for us, but it was also a little nerve-wracking because, like, you can't. I mean, I get it. Like, you can't even talk about Monty Python without people being like, "Oh, these guys think they're Monty Python." Like, we've been hearing that for years, when all we've been doing is saying that's who we grew up loving. But anything that sounds like you're comparing yourself to them, or you're trying to do what they did.
It's like Greta Van Fleet. Do you know Greta Van Fleet?
Yeah, they have a song.
Like, hey, this band's great, and then they go, but they sound like Zeppelin. Yeah, what's wrong with that? Zeppelin's great. Yes.
Yeah, and there are a million bands that sound like Zeppelin. It's ridiculous. But yeah, no, I get it. Like, and I love Led Zeppelin too. Like, Led Zeppelin and Monty Python were like that those years of my life, my adolescence. But I think, people who are super passionate about a group become also very sort of territorial and protective of them. So, but we were just dying to do it. We just thought, if once in our careers we can do something that's really absurdist, really costumey, in a different time and place, and we play all the characters. Yeah. So for us, it kind of was this bucket list thing, and people seem to like it. We won't, it's a thing. We've also never done a streaming movie, so I don't know the metric for success of a movie that goes.
They don't show any numbers, because they don't. They want you to know, but they don't want to. They don't want to pay you, so they don't want you to know how great it is, or how great it's done. So it's always a thing.
Right. So it's different for us. So for us, I just don't, like, we may never know if people liked it or watched it, or they seem to like it.
That's funny. I love that you guys, because here's what makes me laugh so hard, is that you guys are still kind of holding tight to the comedies that we kind of grew up on. And we've been talking about this lately. There's been so many, movies. I just saw they remade Fatal Attraction, right? And so one of the comments was, the movie from the 80s that was so appalling should never, why would they remake this thing when it's so, against today's standards? And I don't know if you remember the first Fatal Attraction. It's a brilliant film. It's so real, and yes, it's about horrible things, I guess, but like the movies of those era, nobody can make anymore. But you guys seem to be kind of blurring that line of doing things that people would still be like, no, it's okay. Even though, you couldn't make Animal House. We were talking beforehand, all the John Hughes movies, they'd be like, you can't make that, 16 Candles or Soul Man, Short Circuit. Somebody was saying the other night. Porky's, especially.
Yeah, you were talking about on this episode. You were talking about watching. There's something about Married with the Kids, and I just saw a funny thing on Twitter today. A sketch of a dad showing his kid some the like teen sex comedies and being like, "Oh my God!" Like, "Hey, we put a camera in the girls' locker room." Like those. Like we all watched Porky's, we all watched Animal House. I think, we've hopefully been able to distill the spirit of buddies and buddies dicking around that we got out of those. And yet, we also have most of the guys now. It's a nice group of guys at the end of the day.
Were there jokes that you guys had that you had to pull? Were there jokes in the original script or when you guys were shooting where people like, dude, I don't think this one's going to fly? It would have crushed in 87, but it is not going to fly today.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what gets sort of weeded out through the writing process of the five of us being in a room is I think, you know, between the five of us, there's usually enough guys with I think sort of good radar for, yeah, that doesn't play anymore, or yeah, that's a little tone deaf. So I just think as we do drafts, if there are things like that, we're pretty good about steering it back to where you can still have the spirit of something outrageous, the spirit of something irreverent, but not come off as a bunch of, you know, a bunch of assholes. You know, with Quasi, what was interesting is as we talk about these attitudes shifting, I'm realizing now, like year by year, you know, what was interesting is like we gave them the script for Quasi. Here's a movie about a hunchback, and he's a lonely weirdo, and nobody likes him, and people treat him like crap. But it's a hero's journey, and he rises to become a hero. And you know, people throw garbage at him. People make fun of him. You know, the fact that he is physically deformed is a joke that people use in the movie. We never got notes on that, you know, in 2021 when that was a script that went to a company that's now Disney. We never got any sensitivity notes, but by the time we had shot and were editing a year later, it was in the last round of editing that suddenly we started getting notes being like, maybe it's not so cool that like somebody throws garbage at a hunchback. Maybe it's not so cool that people are making fun of how he looks. Is there a more sensitive version of that?
No, there is no more. It's a joke.
I mean, how much are the other hunchbacks complaining though? Like, have they unionized?
Yeah, they're a powerful demographic now. But I just think overall sensitivity, even just now, of like, you know, making fun of anybody who's different for any way is really now like, oh no, you just don't do that. And we're running into this problem with the studio where everybody was digging in their heels, and we had all these great beats and these great scenes and jokes that they were asking us to reconsider. And the only reason we kind of got out of it was the marketing department cut the first trailer for the movie, and they really loved it. They sent everybody the trailer. They sent it to us. They sent it to the creative department, who was the ones giving us notes, and all of the sort of newly objectionable jokes were in the trailer. And so then creative was like, oh, okay, well, I guess you can go ahead and get away with these jokes, because the marketing department had said, no, these are the best like jokes in the movie. These are the jokes we want to sell the movie on. And so only because, and it tells you also how much like the tail wags the dog in movie making. It was because marketing department loved the things, then it made it okay.
Well, it's crazy because if you don't pick on somebody and make them feel small or some way, they have no journey. There's no arc. And the whole storytelling of back to the Greeks or whatever, the story is, you know, David and Goliath, and be like, hey man, it's not really cool that you picked on David at the beginning of that story. He's small, he's height challenged, but he's got other attributes. You have to establish the character. Like even in Blazing Saddles, the main character, all the jokes are against the racists. I know it's, you know, it's got all the language that people hear, but the joke is on the bad people.
Yeah, but like, how do you tell any kind of zero to hero story if you cannot establish that somebody is an outsider, is unpopular? So. But it's interesting. So like how will that trend continue, and is it going to be more difficult to?
When Animal House first came out, there was a huge, right before Animal House, there was an era of Puritanism where people were like starting to stomp down on that. And when that movie was made, it changed everything. It kind of blew it back out where people were like, yeah, this is actually pretty funny. Even though we were talking earlier, a girl dies in a kiln explosion, and they go to the school deliberately to bang her roommate. You know, like of course now people would go, dude, that's really offensive. It is. It's super offensive. It's also ridiculously funny. Then they leave the girls at an all African-American club out in the woods. You couldn't, like, today people would be like, unbelievable, but in the tone, it was really, or am I just an old guy where people are like, that's not cool anymore, dude?
I don't know. I mean, somebody put up the question about Airplane, and that was another like monumental touchstone movie. And the question is, could you make that now? I mean, the first thing I think of is like, I speak jive. No, you would not do.
I forgot about that one. I just remember blowing the inflatable pilot.
Yeah.
That, not the jive one. We used to do that in junior high. We would do that joke, like, and we would do the Monty, like we recited these to each other. So we would go, yeah, man, I speak. They would say that. Now you can't even use that accent, or people would blow up.
Yeah. Oh, you would be canceled immediately. You would be done.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, like I'm certainly not going to argue that increased sort of sensitivity and respect is somehow not a good thing. But what I observe with my son, who's a baseball player and 16, is you catch them. It's just gone underground for them. So they know that you can't talk like this. You can't use these words. But when they're together, it makes them. You've made those things more illicit and exciting to them, and so the way that I've caught high school baseball players talking to each other.
It's like a prohibition era all over again. They're going into quiet speakeasies with those kind of jokes.
Having those thoughts. I always, like, when they said, we don't want to hear somebody say racist stuff. My approach was always, no, I want to know who the racists are. I want freedom of speech where people can say things and then we go, that guy's a dick. Right? Because now we're so guarded that it's not going to change somebody from thinking that way, but it's going to make him it's unidentifiable. So for me, I'm always I like to hear people speak freely.
Well, and it's like I'm going back and rewatching 30 Rock, which was one of my favorite series of all time. And they, in incredibly smart ways, touch a lot of third rails. And Alec Baldwin, Jack Donaghy is racist in the way that the men of his generation and men of his demographic are. And I'm amazed how much my wife and I are like, oof, you just couldn't, like, I'm a writer on Tacoma and I may try to go that direction. And that's always like, like it's amazing how much something that's not that old now you watch, and you're like, yep. You couldn't do that joke now. You couldn't.
Yeah, because 30 Rock really isn't that old.
No. She's so good. Tina Fey.
No.
One of the best writers of all time.
It's such a hilarious show.
Oh, it's just a machine gun of jokes. An absolute machine gun of jokes. Yeah, it's really well done. And she knew what to do with Tracy Morgan, who's so funny, but she knew exactly how to use him properly. And so I love that show. It's really great. It is funny, though.
I think at the same time, just like, I think we do a good job in Tacoma FD of being funny, even if we can't always make the jokes that I think are something that would have existed 10 years ago or whatever. And so I don't like people saying, oh, well, comedy's dead now and you can't do funny because you can't. You find different ways. And I think Tacoma is a very funny show that does a great job and still doesn't.
Well, I think it's because you guys use any effort, and you guys all have this brand where people know your sense of humor. It's been established so well that you guys still skirt, but you guys push the envelope probably further than most people in comedy nowadays, I think. And that's what I love most about Tacoma, and especially when I watched Quasi. For me, it was kind of a throwback movie of that kind of comedy that I really love, and there's so much heart in it. That's what, some people, like, all they hear are the bad words or somebody doing something, and you're not seeing the whole story there, that it's actually making fun of the bad people. you know, and it's the heart that brought out what I love most in the movie.
Yeah, when I saw it on Wednesday, it was the first time my wife and my kids had seen it. And yeah, it was interesting because I tend to think of it as the most kind of heartwarming thing we've done. There's a lot about friendship. I think the romance is one of the more interesting and cool romance things we've done. But then I'd also forgot, like, oh, but there's also like a prolonged gag about a man's scrotum being tortured and stretched out, and seeing my family respond to that, I'm like, oh, that's right. That's a pretty outrageous, ridiculous, and grotesque bit of comedy that we did there.
You mean when the man's scrotum gets nailed to the stump?
Yeah. Efren and scrotum nailed to a tree trunk and stretched prodigiously. But I think that is maybe the key is, if there is a heart at the center, you're allowed to then be really disgusting around the periphery.
Yeah, that is funny. We were thinking it felt late. Ben says the same thing. Felt late 70s, early 80s Brooks in that way. Very Mel Brooksy as well.
Yeah, there is a Mel Brooks don't feel to it.
And those, I mean, Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. Like, if I could take myself out of this time and place and be like, I could have been in any movies, those are the ones.
I just think people are so sensitive to a fault where, why do you care? Why do you care? Like the whole Bud Light thing. Why do you care, man? What do you care what other people do? Like, people are so, it's like, you always say, just you do you, man. But nobody does. Everyone's doing everybody else. We're like, people will comment on this, I'm sure, later and go, no, Jamie, it's like everyone feels like they have to have an opinion about everything instead of just going, yeah, man, whatever, moving on. Like, people
just not for me.
Go over them.
Yeah, that's the rough part. Is like the era of just minding your own fucking business,
It's over. Can anyone just shut up? Can anyone just not comment? I used to say that, like, I would post something or something and I'd say, listen, I this is my own thing. It's my own page or something. There's no comment necessary. I don't really need your opinion on this. And then sure enough, the first comment would be like, look, I know you said not to say anything, but I got to speak up here on your page to let you know how I felt about. I don't care, dude. I don't care.
I get unsolicited parenting advice all
the time. I get email like, you're a terrible father. I don't care.
I get that I'm too soft on my kids, and I'm like, so you judged that from the 13 seconds of one video I posted 2 weeks ago. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we've wired our brains to think that the internet is a place for, like, confrontation. Like, it's, and I try, I love Twitter because there's so many accounts that I love. When I get content, there's so much content that I love, and I've tried my best to curate it to just be things that make me smarter or make me laugh or make me feel good. But it's a lot of work to try to curate all the outrage out of the internet.
I don't do Twitter. That's why we go live, because we literally click on, we do the show, like, we'll go through some comments and stuff, but I don't really do Twitter much. I don't post as much as everyone's like, you need to post more. You need to be on. If you want to blow this up, I'm like, I don't really care about blowing it up, man. I love hanging with my friends, talking, and some people seem to enjoy it. But other than that, I don't care. I don't care about much at all. And I'm so amazed when people care. Like, oh, you said something that was so offensive. Like, people are like, well, it's, here's what I was laughing at the other day. So if you do like a Southern accent, right? It's like, everyone's like, oh man, he's doing a Southern accent. And it's like, oh, that's cool. That's really funny. Or you go like, hey man, you do a Boston accent. But if I did a Chinese accent right now, I would be utterly destroyed. I'm like, well, you can make fun of the South. That's all right, man. You can make fun of any part of the U.S. You might even get away with France or you might get away with British, but man, you go to certain countries and you do like an Indian accent or a Chinese accent, and people would be like, "Hey, man, uncool." So, like, where's the country list? Like, because I loved your Pope, man.
Right. We started. There's in Tacoma. There's a Lemmy's character Eddie Panisi. We do a lot of flashbacks to his forefathers, so we keep getting more and more into these really cartoonish Italian stereotypes.
Hey, how you
And
doing? That's okay.
it always felt like, okay, well, that's allowed. That's okay. But we have started to have people kind of within the sort of broken lizard community or family be like, hey, that's a really ugly stereotype. You did like the organ grinder character with the mustache.
Hey.
And you're like, no, that's on the accepted list. But it is like, why? Like they do a bit this season where they play like Scottish Highlanders, and you're like, all right, well, you can do that. Italian, it's.
I used to talk about that being because as an Irish guy and a redhead, doors wide open. You can ridicule us. You did on the show. Every show they destroy me for being a redhead. They call me Invisighost. I'm pale. They just beat me up, and I'm albino. I have Satan in my soul or whatever. But if that was a different ethnicity, people would be like, hey man, you can't. But for the Irish and the redheads, they're like, no, he's drunk, just move on. It's like totally fine, but certain things are not cool, man. Not cool. Yeah. It's like when people are overweight. Like, listen, people are overweight. I get it. People are overweight. But if you can't fat shame people, and you can't even mention it or talk about it. But I'm always like, look, most of my comedy is directed at myself. I'm always trying to become better. So yes, if you're overweight, I want you to feel comfortable in your own body. I want you to have fun and not feel shame or anything. But let's face facts. We could all be better. You know what I mean? Like we could improve, but nobody can take a joke about their own structure. And that's what's starting to really get in the way of comedy.
I've had people actually go as far as to tell me I can't make the jokes about myself, and I'm like, I feel like that I can because it's me.
You make an overweight challenge joke about yourself, like people will light you up.
Well, I have that whole bit. Remember where I got stuck in the slide at the theme park, and people told me you shouldn't do that bit, and I was like, but it actually happened because I'm a fat ass. Like it happened.
Go up into the habit trail at the park to get his kid out. His kid wouldn't come out, and then he got stuck. And they had to push him out of the thing.
I mean, I will say this: I was picking up one of my kids the other night, and the car in front of me had a bumper sticker. A no fat chicks bumper sticker. And I was like, I gasped audibly. I was like, ooh! And it does. That strikes me now as so incredibly disgusting. But then my mind also went back to like, I remember the 90s where probably thousands of people had t-shirts or bumper stickers. And so, like that's...
That movie, Shallow Hal.
Yeah.
Although it's making and again, it's the joke is on the people who did fat shame people. Mm-hmm. He sees her inner beauty. It's actually a beautiful film, but people now are like, you can't make that, man.
Can't make it.
There's a movie in the 80s. I want to say it's River Phoenix, and they go and they have a pig pool. Do you remember this? It was a thing, and it's been done before. I think they did another one with dinner where you brought crazy people. But the goal of it was a joke on people, and they did this whatever in the 60s or 70s. They would have a party where you had to bring a date that was atrocious. And the guy who brought the worst weight challenge date won. And I forget the name of the movie, right? Do you remember that?
River Phoenix, was that like Dogfight?
It is dog. Is it Dogfight?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. Wait, what can I say? What can I say about it?
I remember it because I don't think I saw it, but yeah, I remember that. I remember
that. But they had movies like that where people would do stuff like that. They had Dinner for Schmucks.
Right? Like, Dinner for Schmucks with.
We'd be like, oh man, you're picking on people.
But also like they like Heffernan has been told by agents, managers, and studios like, you can't lose weight. Like. And I think somebody mentioned Pitch Perfect. What's her name?
Rebel Wilson.
Yeah. Like I know, and I've heard that like her people were devastated and outraged when she lost weight. you know, you still like I said, we're still operating under like a fat equals funny paradigm, and yet at the same time, well, no, you can't have somebody make jokes about somebody's size, but if we have an overweight comedian, well, he's got to stay overweight. She's got to stay overweight because that's funny.
It's Chris
There's
Farley.
a little hypocrisy going on, yeah.
Yeah, it was Chris Farley, absolutely. Where people did. Well, you said that here's what happens. It's not just film or TV or music or anything, but you said you went to do Club Dread and it was a little off brand for us. But that as an artist, you're trying to do what you love. But people, once you get into this one lane where people go, I'll go out for drama sometimes, and people are like, you can't do drama. And you're like, yeah, well, of course we can.
Unless you're playing racist cop, yeah.
Right. Racist cop comes up quite a bit for me.
Yeah. And I think, that's a fine line for us of like, well, right, but should Broken Lizard always just do stuff that we want to do? Or how much time do we spend thinking about what our audience wants? And, you know, we won't ever do a drama, but we might do something at some point more adult or subtle, maybe. I mean, yeah, there's a point at which we're all in our 50s. And I think if we'd like to keep making stuff, it's going to start looking embarrassing if we continue to have a somewhat juvenile sensibility. So, yeah.
It's like Jerry Lewis and he's like 75 and he's still, and you're like, hey man, 70, 75. You guys should do like Steel Magnolias where it's just all dudes. It's like a dude Steel Magnolia.
In drag. See, that would be the comic premise is we all play women.
You can't do drag anymore. Half the country wouldn't play it. That would be the end of you guys.
But, you know, something like there's a great John Cassavetes movie called Husbands that, you know, is problematic in a bunch of ways, but something like that of a bunch of dudes who go off for the weekend and just won't go home and just continue to like, you know, have this vacation and just kind of go AWOL, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
What was the last, I saw something pop up about Broken Lizard.
Yep.
Sci-fi. It's funny. Yeah. We, talk about genres that it would be fun to play with now that we've, you know, done a costume period piece. And we were on tour together for the last couple of weeks doing press and doing screenings. And yeah, I started thinking about that. Like, we've never done anything in the sci-fi world. We started riffing on cloning. So that's like somebody asked about kind of the genesis of a lot of this stuff is like, we are on tour. We're in, we were in the back of like a van or something, or we were in a hotel bar and you're drinking and somebody makes a joke and then about a clone. And then like everybody kind of sparks. And then the next thing you know, we've spent like 6 days where all the jokes are about cloning. And then, then suddenly we're like, oh, okay. So does that warrant now somebody drawing up like an outline for a clone movie, you know, and that's how the process works. But yeah, I think that could be a fun way to expand.
Dude, it's so funny because I was just talking to a friend the other day and I was like, you know how billionaires are like doing the rocket ship stuff? They do that in the public eye. But you know, these dudes are cloning themselves. There's no two ways about it. There's an island somewhere off of South America that a gillionaire owns, like a evil lair from James Bond. And they are absolutely, wouldn't you? If you were a billionaire, like more money than like Rupert Murdoch just fired Tucker Carlson. That shows you like Tucker Carlson's filthy rich. And the other dude's like, dude, but you're like, he's stupid rich. And when you're stupid rich, you know, you're sitting there going, you watch Succession. They're like
I was just going to say, I was watching Succession in this last episode in Norway. I'm like, God, it'd be nice to be stupid rich. Like I tend to think of myself as being like I'm like my wife and I are kind of weird, sort of like psyched to be in second place, happy to be a VP. Like it'd be nice to like be comfortable, but I don't think she and I have ever been the like, oh God, we want jets or whatever. But this last episode of Succession was the first time we're like, man, what do we have to do to become stupid, filthy rich? Yeah.
there's like NBA player rich, and then there's NBA owner rich, and that's the dude.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing it, right? They've got to be. If you were that rich, wouldn't you be like, oh man, let's try this cloning? Elon Musk has got to be cloning himself somewhere.
But Jamie, I'm not even close to being a billionaire, and there's a replicated AI version of me already created.
Tell Paul this whole story. So he's been AI'd because tell him the whole story. It's crazy.
So my wife had a stroke after our twins were born, and then I got sick and I almost passed away. So I sought out this company and found a company that was making AI versions of you where you upload your videos and audio and interactions so that my kids could still talk to an AI version of me if something were to happen.
It's Jor-El. It's Jor-El, right?
From like Superman's dad. Yep, exactly. So there is now a functioning, sarcastic Jamie, you've heard it talk.
It's unbelievable, dude. You think you're talking to him, and it's not. And it's not written or anything. It's an AI. It's just it's listening to what you say and then responds like Jor-El does in Superman. It's insane.
That's very Black Mirror. Yeah, that's
yeah.
It's only a matter of time before
he breaks free and then take over your family.
That's amazing. That's why I like. I'm really into Ray Bradbury. I don't know if you guys read Ray Bradbury, but like that's the kind of stuff he was writing short stories about in the 50s, and you're like, unbelievable that he was so far out ahead of all this stuff.
Him and Dick, Philip K. Dick, all those guys.
Yeah.
They really basically wrote the future. It's crazy. Yeah, I think the cloning is really great. That's really funny. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about it too. That's like. Multiplicity was a great movie.
Great movie.
And I would love to go back and revisit that. I think I was trying to get us to do that as a family movie. And my wife was like, I remember it being really stressful. And I realized my wife has a thing like her threshold for enjoying a movie. I think my son has it too. Like we watched Mrs. Doubtfire, and that like the comedy of like, oh boy, somebody's coming and I have to change the way I look, or da. Like I really there are people who just can't watch that.
Yeah, I don't love that.
And that's what Multiplicity is. Is like, oh, I've got another version. Oh shit, I got to hide the other version. I got two versions running around. Like it's that it's that Brady Bunch. Like Greg Brady's like changing costumes in the middle of the date. I realize there's a certain audience out there that stresses them out too much.
I think if they remake Multiplicity, that the consecutive clone shouldn't get stupider; it should get smarter. And that way you're more in peril because the smarter ones start to think and you're like, hey buddy. And you're like, wow, you're actually smarter than I am. And then you start to get even more worried that he's going to kill you and take over.
Right.
Like it should go that way. Or I thought Multiplicity was fantastic. I don't know. Can you make that?
We got into when we were on tour, that was part of the joke was like, you have to wake up. You've been out, they did a screening and a post party and you're out getting drunk until 1 a.m. and then you have to be up at 6 to do morning radio in some town. So there was always then that would be the thing that you would have your clone do. But then, yes, it would be that the clone kind of gets off on that. Like, holy shit, I'm on the radio. Oh my God. Like, this thing that we think of as being, get this clone to do this thing that I don't want to do. Might be interesting to them. Might be like enticing. Okay, I want to do more of this. So yeah, I think there's tons of fun in that space.
Well, you can see 100 years from now, it'll be easy. They'll just clone. You could clone LeBron James. You clone LeBron James, and all of a sudden the team comes out next year, and you're like, it's like 5 LeBrons coming out.
We've talked about cloning some of our animals. We've got some dogs, and we're like, maybe we clone these dogs, like
we just went away for a week. Spring break, we went to Colorado, and the most expensive thing basically was boarding the dog. It'd almost be cheaper just to get rid of the dog and then just when you come back and clone him. And if it had a cheap cloning process and just go, all right, he's gone, and then the next one comes in. I'm sure right now people are typing, Jamie, I can't believe you said that.
Right. You said we would get canceled during the show, and it is. That's the thing that's going to do it.
Advocating for killing dogs because it's easier to clone them than to feed them. Boo!
Oh, Jamie, boo! Yeah, that's crazy, dude. That's so funny. We haven't talked about your kids at all. So your kids are big athletes.
Which is funny. I was not an athlete at all. I was a terrible athlete. And my wife was not a good athlete. She was a swimmer. But she's tall. Somehow, yeah, two kind of unathletic people had two really athletic kids. And so it's super cool because it's a thing like I get to enjoy an experience that I never had through them.
Play any sports?
What's that?
You didn't play any sports?
I played I went like little league baseball. I was like a quintessential number 11 hitter on a
Not in high school. You never played any high school sports at all? No high school sports at all?
I ran track. I could do the hurdles. I did the high hurdles, like the high hurdle sprint. But no, and I'm not like unathletic, but I just I never excelled at anything. But I've got two kids who are like really high end.
I was talking to a friend.
My son is just
my friend's daughter's on a club soccer team or whatever, and she's super talented, but she's small. Both parents are pretty little, and she's little, but she's got great footwork, and she's not blazing fast, and she's not big or anything, but she's super talented. But at this age, she got brought down a team, and the other people, the team basically brought up everybody who was big and fast. Because in the back of their head, this is absolute reality, they're like, look, I can teach you to play soccer. I can't teach you to be fast, and I can't teach you to be big, right? So there is something about genetics as you go forward in sports. Another friend of mine, she was a big volleyball player, but she got to a point where everyone else grew, and she didn't grow. Yeah. And everyone's like, I think you're done with volleyball. I think it's the end of volleyball for you.
Yeah, you see that absolutely with the kids who excel. It really is about their growth trajectory. So with super tall kids, they were ahead of the curve, and I think we took my daughter to volleyball tryouts because we wanted her to do something. We tried her in softball, she hated it. We tried her in basketball, she hated it. We tried her in soccer, she hated it. And volleyball was the last gasp. And we took her to a volleyball tryout with her having not played other than just sort of goofing off in the yard. And it's a very elite program. We didn't know that until we got there. Like, oh, this is stupid. What are we doing? This is like high level. And the coach, she was 9 or 10, and the coach was like, nope, she's going to be on the number 1 team. We're like, no, she doesn't play. And he's like, she's tall. You leave it to me. I'll teach her how to play, but you can't teach that. You can't teach that height. You can't create that height. So for her, it was entirely about being the tallest girl. My son is seeing it now. Like, he was always a tall kid, but then you get into high school and there are kids who are gigantic. Like you get varsity Southern California baseball, and guys are huge monsters who just put it out on the regular. And, he's a pitcher, so, he's okay, but he's not filling out. So he's not batting anymore because, the guys who are in the starting lineup in varsity high school, the guys who put it out.
Yeah. I always thought in basketball they should put a second hole in the floor. So you have 1 at 10 feet, and then you have a second hole on the floor. And that way, every team has to have a 7-footer, but you also need a couple really short dudes who can slide in and dunk it on the floor. It would make it easier.
Dunk it on the floor.
Yeah.
A lot of twisted ankles of people stepping into that hole, though. I see a lot of liability issues.
I haven't worked out that problem. That's an issue in my drawings, but I'm working. I might put a fence around. I'm not sure exactly, but we'll work.
Yeah, workshop it.
I'll workshop that. Yeah. It's so funny, dude. The kids today with that thing, that makes me laugh so hard. When they watch like the Academy Award and the person gets the Academy Award and they stand up there and they go, "Follow your dream. Don't let anyone tell you can't do whatever it is you want." I didn't have a plan B. I was going to do this whether I always had a plan B. I was the guy who was like, yeah, if this doesn't work out, I'll go, because I wanted to be a pro baseball player. I wanted to play pro soccer. And then I was like, I went to college and some dude was like, in a 100-yard dash, he beat me by 40 yards on the soccer team. And I was like, I can't guard that guy. And then I wasn't even going to really get into acting after the Navy, but I was always really funny, and people were like, you should, and kind of fell into it. But I always was like, I think for my kids, I always want to guide them to go, listen, I want you to love what you do, but also go where you're skilled, like where your suit of talents take you. More so, like you'll do better there than you will. Like I know people who are trying to act who, like it's not going to happen. I don't know what to tell you. It's just not going to happen. And so it's hard to watch people like kids at these club teams are like, they want to do this so bad and their parents want them. And you're like, dude, you're really small. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. And that's really it. Like with my daughter, like I think she has a good, healthy sort of balance. Like she loves volleyball, but she has a lot of stuff that she loves. And with my son, it's just getting to that point now where it's like, he's really good. He's starting to get recruited, but it is also like, he is realizing he really thought for like the last 10 years that he would be like the number one pick because he was dominant, but just didn't understand that like, all right, but the pyramid just keeps getting more and more narrow. And so now it's interesting. It's starting to kind of come around. You're like, okay, here's some other things that I like. Here's some other things that I could maybe do with my life. And so we're like, okay, good. I mean, I would love it if he played in college, and I think he will, but yeah. Even pros are going to retire at some point. You see too many like pros who retire and like they don't know what to do with their life. So even if your kid is going to find their dream, you still got to find something else to do with your life. You'll be done at some point.
We talk about that a lot about I felt like a jack of all trades. Like I was never the greatest at anything, but I could do everything pretty good. And I feel like that's what I really want for my kids, because you're right. These kids nowadays, like the swim club, my daughter's going to join, they swim. She's 9. They're going to swim 5 nights a week. And I was like, that's a lot for a 9. It seems crazy to me. Like those are nights I was like, maybe learn an instrument, a second language. Let's, do some creative writing, do something else to kind of, be an all around person. But kids nowadays are so laser focused on that one thing. They're like, how do you not burn out at some point on this stuff? I don't know.
Oh yeah. And you see it. And it's, especially in, I think it's the thing about California where you can play sports year round. You can play baseball year round. I see it again and again and again is talking to some dad and he's crestfallen because his son just told him like, look, I'm done. I'm burned out. I'm in high school now. I want to chase girls. I have these other things. And this dad who has in his mind just projected out this superstar career is like, oh, it never occurred to me that like doing lessons year round and playing baseball year round might at some point like burn this kid out.
Yeah, that's what the clubs do. I never did a sport the whole year. It was like seasonal soccer in the fall,
it's
baseball.
Totally different than we were kids.
So crazy, so different to me. It's so weird, but yeah.
I was lucky if I finished the season,
Paul, because I know you wrote. You also write and direct other projects and stuff. I know you did one with a buddy of mine, I think, right? Kyle Howard was it?
Yeah. The nasty piece of work. He's great.
Yeah.
He's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also, I try to write as much as possible. I'll direct occasionally, but what I really like a lot more is writing. So I've been able to set up some stuff. That was a Blumhouse project. It's, usually I can kind of get something sold or something off the ground, which is a really nice balance to the Broken Lizard stuff that I have this thing I do with my guys. And then I have things that I do on my own. So, that's been cool. And I think when we finished Quasi, like that was the most fun I'd had acting in anything. I got to be a villain. I got to be kind of 2 villains. And
can we hear the Pope for 2 seconds? Can we hear the Pope? I want to know where the character came from.
I just, always wanted to, we watched a lot of Braveheart, and in Braveheart, anybody of any importance has this sort of non-specific sort of accent that just suggests the sort of a certain, caliber of human being. And so, I channeled every guy in every period piece, who's just European, kind of vaguely European, sophisticated. So I had such a blast that I for the first time, I sat down and said, I'm going to write something that I can act in because I really got a kick out of acting. And it appears that, that's getting set up, and I might be shooting something in August, like my own movie, which is wild to me. It didn't occur to me to do that until I was 52.
Yeah, it's weird. All of a sudden, you get older and you have kids, and you're like, "Oh, maybe I should try to do this other stuff." Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And I know you guys is Super Troopers 3 coming. It's what do you?
Yeah, we're handing in the first draft to the studio. I think tomorrow or Monday, because the WGA strike could be coming. Right. So that will be the next group thing. Hopefully by the end of the year. Super Troopers 3. The greatest creative differences with what we write with Broken Lizard guys. It is really never about like, this is funny, this is not funny. It tends to be tonal issues of like, I don't think, this joke or this moment fits in the movie tonally. It might be that's too broad, or, some guys are sticklers for like, that's a joke where this thing doesn't actually happen on planet Earth. So it tends to be about, is that realistic? Would that really happen? I mean, I think we do a lot of broad comedy, but generally speaking, it's not like the Zucker brothers where things just magically happen for the sake of a joke. And so, somebody can say something and it makes everybody laugh, but then we're like, okay, but is that a thing that could possibly happen, or does it make sense for that thing to happen? Those tend to be the fights. Very rarely do we ever disagree on whether something's funny or not.
Yeah, I can see that. It's all grounded. Same with Tacoma. Like this, the jokes are absolutely insane, but you're like, that could happen. Like that's
whatever. You can have cartoonish personalities. Like Wolf Boykins is a cartoonish character. So that gives you a little, that stretches you out a little bit. But I think we still like my favorite thing that I wrote. There's an episode called Rise of the Machines about they get the station outfitted with AI and stuff like that. And I like that because then it can get very broad. And I love, sci-fi and Bradbury and stuff. But often that was the case where those guys had to keep kind of scaling me back to be like, okay, but it still has to be a thing that happens in Tacoma FD because it happens in real life. So those are the kinds of things.
It's funny. All right, listen, we told you an hour. We're out. We're going to be out of here. It's great to see you, dude. It was so much fun to see you in Quasi. It was so much fun to work.
Super fun.
Awakens. Tacoma FD, the new season's coming out this summer. Super Troopers 3 will be sometime in the future, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon when you're starting this project in August, dude. Really fun.
Yeah, I would love to come back. Thanks for doing. Really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Everybody, Paul Soter, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. We'll let him go. And that's it. A crazy special live version of the Parents Lounge.
And not our only one today.
Oh, that's right.
We will be back this evening. We have a fantastic guest tonight. Author of God Made a Mom, or God Made a Mother. Leslie Means is there. Super fun show. She's going to be there.
Check it out tonight. You can always find us on our YouTube, Facebook pages, Twitch, I believe is one, and of course on iTunes. So be sure to follow, like, subscribe, and tell any other parents who might need a laugh to get through the day about us. And we'll see you next time here on the Parents Lounge.
Yep, we'll see you tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Have a good night, everybody.